We're going to take a second look at Psalm 18, which, as I said yesterday, has become a very firm favorite of mine. It's a very dramatic and powerful psalm full of graphic imagery. I tried to show you last time how I believe the psalm is structured in a certain way. It's in 6 sections, and the first and the last section parallel each other. The second, the fifth, and the third, and the fourth. So the first section from 1 to 3, and then the last in the last few verses we looked at last time parallel each other, and we saw how they describe for us what God is to David. David speaks about God as his strength and his rock and his shield and so on. All images of strength and power. Now, from verses 4 to 19, and then again from 30 to 45, we see what God does for David. See, David's in deep distress. He spells it out in verse 4 and 5 particularly. The cords of death encompass me. The cords of Sheol entangle me. He feels he's at the very end of his resources. His life is about to ebb away. So he calls to God in verse 6. In my distress I called upon the Lord. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. And then the next verses in this dramatic form depict what God does as he rises to intervene and to come to the rescue of his child. I want you to read those verses carefully, thoughtfully. I want you, as it were, you can't do this, but if you could close your eyes as you're reading and imagine the scene taking place and see the way that God comes, literally moving heaven and earth to respond to the cry of his fearful and endangered child. But there's also echoes of great Old Testament images here. See, verses 7 to 11 particularly is echoes of Mount Sinai, when God came down, when he gave the law, and smoke and fire and earthquake took place. Verses 12 to 14, there's very clear echoes, surely, of the people crossing the Red Sea and how God parted the waters and laid the dry ground bare. The psalmist puts it literally in verse 15, the channels of the sea were seen and the foundations of the world were laid bare, the blast of your breath. So these are great iconic experiences from God's people in the past, and God is, as it were, replaying them for David now. He doesn't only come to the aid of his nation, he comes to the aid of his child. And then verses 30 to 45, which is a parallel section to 4 to 19. David is in more personal reflective mode, thinking of all the things that God has done for him, all that he has accomplished by the hand of God, all the blessing and protection and deliverance God has given to him. And it's all because, as we saw last time, David can say of this God, he's my God. And when the child of God cries out to God, God cannot but hear and come to their aid. There's another parallel here that strikes me as I think about this. It comes from the little prophecy of Habakkuk, almost at the end of our Old Testament. And in the first 2 chapters, Habakkuk is crying to God, saying, God, why won't you get involved? The nation is in a terrible place. Your covenant people are godless and immoral and unjust, and you don't appear to be doing anything. And then God says, just wait, I'm going to do something that you wouldn't believe even if I told you. And then he gives Habakkuk what I call a sort of virtual reality experience. He replays for Habakkuk some of the great deliverance acts of God in the past for his own people, as if to say to Habakkuk, I've done this in the past and I will do it again. I will literally move heaven and earth. And at the end of that, Habakkuk is left literally breathless. His knees tremble underneath him. He's seen history before his eyes as a reminder to him that with God nothing is impossible. There's also another little echo of Habakkuk too, because in Psalm 18, David says in verse 33, he made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights, quoted almost at the very end of Habakkuk. So get a picture in your mind. Reassure yourself that your God, if he is your God will come to your aid, whatever your distress, if only you call out to him and ask for his help. We'll do one more look at this psalm next time. Until then, the Lord bless you.